Did you know that governments have shut down the internet almost 1,000 times over the last 5 years? This was done for no other reason than to silence dissent, and it underscores the importance of having a decentralized peer-to-peer internet that can't be turned off by power-hungry politicians. This is exactly what Helium is hoping to become. Today, I'm going to give you a quick explanation of what Helium is, bring you up to speed on some of the project's most important updates, and tell you why HNT could become a top 10 cryptocurrency. I know you're eager to explore, but you need to know what you're in for. This video is for education and entertainment and nothing more. Please contact a financial advisor if you're feeling poor. Also note that HNT is a crypto I hold. Now, if the YouTube algorithm brought you here, my name is Guy and my mission is to make crypto clear. I do this by creating the highest quality crypto content you'll ever see or hear. Coins, tokens, news, reviews, and other topics in the crypto sphere. If the inflation of fiat currencies fills you with fear, subscribe to the channel and ping that notification bell to get the knowledge you need to make your purchasing power last for years. If you're on the go, you can skip around using the timestamps below, but do your best to stick around until the end of the show. Right, that's all you need to know. Let's see how big Helium could grow. If this is the first time you're hearing about Helium, here's the TLDR. Helium was founded in 2013 by Sean Fanning, Sean Carey, and Amir Halim, and even though it's always had the same mission, it didn't become a crypto project until 2018. Helium was created by Helium Systems Inc., a for-profit software company based in the United States. Helium's development is coordinated by the Decentralized Wireless Alliance, a non-profit that also appears to be based in the United States. Helium raised almost $40 million in its early days from tech VCs, including Google Ventures, $15 million from crypto VCs in 2019, and has since raised hundreds of millions more from both. Its mainnet went live in July 2019, following the deployment of the first physical devices which power its peer-to-peer networks. Now, Helium consists of 4 components: Helium Hotspots, the HNT cryptocurrency, the Helium Console, and the Helium blockchain. Helium Hotspots are physical devices which transmit wireless signals including long-fi and 5G. Long-fi is a low-frequency signal with a long reach that's used for IoT-compatible devices such as electric scooters, and 5G is a high-frequency signal that's used for, well, standard internet stuff. Helium hotspots come in all shapes, sizes, and configurations, and that's because the instructions to make them are completely open source. You could theoretically make a hotspot yourself if you wanted to. There are also dozens of companies that create Helium hotspots if you prefer to buy rather than build, and the first hotspot manufacturer was Helium Systems Inc. All companies that create Helium hotspots are thoroughly vetted by the Decentralized Wireless Alliance and approved via community governance. Over 600,000 Helium hotspots have been set up so far, and recent comments by Helium co-founder Amir Halim suggest there are another 2.4 million waiting to be manufactured and shipped. The reason why people have been buying Helium hotspots is because you can earn Helium's native cryptocurrency called HNT for broadcasting their long-fi and 5G signals. Helium hotspots earn HNT when they relay data packets from any devices connected to their peer-to-peer networks, and through a novel proof-of-work process called proof of coverage. Proof of coverage involves challenging other Helium hotspots that are within range to prove that they are transmitting a signal. This incentivizes people to set up Helium hotspots in a mesh-like manner, creating a massive peer-to-peer network. Individuals and institutions can use a special dashboard called the Helium Console to leverage this massive peer-to-peer network for their operations. So far, Helium has partnered with dozens of companies and even the Californian city of San Jose. Naturally, the Helium Console isn't free, but its usage fees technically aren't paid in HNT. Instead, they're paid for in data credits, which are created by burning HNT and are analogous to airline miles in that they cannot be sold, cannot be transferred, and cannot be converted back into HNT. Data credits are also used to pay for all transactions on the Helium blockchain, which is operated by nearly 3,500 validators who must stake a minimum of 10,000 HNT and lock it up for 5 months to earn about 5.3% per year. Delegation is not possible, and additional HNT staking doesn't increase rewards. The Helium blockchain was built from the ground up, and it can only process about 2 transactions per second. This is because its purpose is not to support a booming DeFi ecosystem or NFT marketplace, but to securely power global decentralized peer-to-peer networks. Now, all this barely scratches the surface of how Helium works, and I strongly suggest going back and watching my first video about the project if anything I just said didn't make sense. That will be in the description. Now, it's only been a few months since I last covered Helium, but quite a bit has happened since then. Shortly after my last video about the project in October, Helium announced the introduction of a new kind of hotspot called a data-only hotspot. Data-only hotspots are like regular hotspots, except that they don't participate in proof-of-coverage rewards and don't require elaborate hardware to operate. Data-only hotspots effectively lower the cost of participation on the Helium network without compromising its proof-of-coverage process. FYI, all data transmitted on Helium is encrypted by default. At the end of October, Helium announced a partnership with Dish Network to bring peer-to-peer 5G to its 8 million customers. Specifically, it'll make it possible for Dish Network customers to deploy their own Helium 5G hotspots and start earning HNT for providing 5G signal. In November, Helium experienced 3 severe network disruptions. The first 2 were caused by abnormally large blocks being submitted to the Helium blockchain, which validators were unable to process. The third disruption was due to a synchronization issue that arose because of the second disruption. To fix these issues, Helium developers put a cap on the maximum block size and improved the synchronization process between validators and hotspots. In January, the Decentralized Wireless Alliance announced the expansion of its grants program by adding 2 new advisors who will oversee upcoming projects that are building with or on Helium. Helium also partnered with a project called DataGovs to monitor real-world data using Helium-compatible devices, starting with the city of Miami. At the end of January, Grayscale announced that it was considering creating an HNT trust, which would make it possible for institutions to invest in the project in a regulated manner. Unfortunately, an HNT trust has yet to materialize. More on that later. In February, Helium announced that it had released a software developer kit that will make it possible for Helium hotspot manufacturers to create their own custom mobile apps for their brand of hotspots. Helium also announced that it had raised an additional $200 million from various crypto VCs, bringing the valuation of the company behind Helium to a handsome $1.2 billion. Now, raising that amount of capital post-ICO is a sign that a crypto project is super legit, and you can learn about the other crypto projects that fall into this category by using the link in the description. Anyways, all these updates, announcements, and developments have taken HNT on a tear, and though it's fallen more than 50% from its all-time high, it's still in a strong uptrend. This is actually somewhat surprising given HNT's tokenomics. Those of you who watched my previous video about the project might recall that HNT's initial inflation is fairly aggressive, with its supply going from 0 to 150 million in its first 4 years. If my calculations are correct, HNT's circulating supply has increased by about 14 million in just the last 4 months. Assuming an average price of $30, that's $420 million of potential sell pressure. While it's very unlikely that all of this newly minted HNT was sold, 35% of it went to the holders of Helium's 10,000 security tokens as per the initial distribution schedule. Now, I can't seem to find any information about who exactly is holding these security tokens and how many these entities hold, but a recent interview with Helium's COO suggests most of them are held by Helium's investors rather than the team. What's interesting there is that one of Helium's biggest investors is Multicoin Capital, and it is insanely bullish on Helium as a project. As such, it's safe to assume that it isn't selling too much HNT, if any. Even so, a substantial chunk of HNT's newly minted supply was likely sold because that remaining 65% is going to validators and helium hotspot operators as rewards. Funnily enough, it looks like the biggest buyers of HNT have actually been helium's validators and hotspot operators. Almost 1,000 validators have been added since October, and each one must have purchased at least 10,000 HNT. If you do the maths, that's almost 10 million HNT or $300 million of buying pressure. As for hotspot operators, Helium's documentation states that connecting a Helium hotspot to the blockchain costs $40 in data credits. It also specifies that this connection cost is usually paid for by the manufacturer of that hotspot when it's purchased. Almost 400,000 hotspots have been added since October, and that means each one bought and burned $40 worth of HNT. Again, if you do the maths, that's $16 million of buying pressure. This leaves around $100 million of buying pressure unaccounted for, and I reckon that this outstanding amount came from speculative investors and then some. This speculative investing has obviously declined as the crypto market has struggled, but recall that there are still around 2.4 million hotspot devices that are waiting to connect to Helium's network. This means HNT is basically guaranteed to see a minimum of $100 million of buying pressure in the coming months, which is a lot for an altcoin with a market cap of around $2 billion. The real question is whether HNT could really rally as a result, and the answer lies in Helium's roadmap. Although Helium doesn't technically have a roadmap for 2022, upcoming milestones for the project can be found in Helium's 2021 roadmap, its blog posts, interviews with the team, and Helium's pending improvement proposals. So, starting with Helium's 2021 roadmap, it looks like it didn't manage to meet many of its milestones last year, so it's likely that these will be met this year. The first missing roadmap milestone relates to validators, namely overstaking and slashing. In plain English, this means validators will be able to earn more by staking more, and will also risk losing some or all of their stake if they try and manipulate the network. The second missing roadmap milestone relates to the proof of coverage protocol, and all the 2021 roadmap says is to be determined. Now, I suspect this has to do with stuff like region-specific proof of coverage rewards that I covered in the previous Helium video. The third missing roadmap milestone relates to introducing additional blockchains to Helium's network, something that's much needed given its current bottlenecks. The fourth and final missing roadmap milestone relates to the development of unspecified decentralized applications, which is again difficult to do given Helium's blockchain. When it comes to the upcoming milestones in Helium's blog posts, most of these can be found in Helium's year-end recap for 2021. First, Helium will introduce additional light hotspots that will make it easier for people to join the network. Right now, regular Helium hotspots cost between $500 and $1,000, and light hotspots are expected to cost up to 10 times less than that, while offering the same rewards and features. Second, Helium will seek to secure additional roam agreements for its networks. For context, roam agreements make it possible for individuals and institutions to supplement their existing networks with Helium's peer-to-peer networks. Third, Helium will try to capitalize on the end of 3G networks, which are being scrapped in many countries, including the United States, where AT&T just shut down its 3G network. Operators of over 2 billion 3G-dependent devices around the world will have to either upgrade to 4G or build their own private networks by the end of the year, and Helium hopes to offer them an alternative. Make no mistake, if Helium can capture even a fraction of the 3G market, the demand for HNT will be off the charts. And finally, Helium will roll out at least 40,000 5G-compatible hotspots created by FreedomFi in the United States by the end of the year, which will make Helium one of the largest 5G networks in the country. In terms of upcoming milestones in interviews with the Helium team, most of these were revealed by Helium's COO, Frank Mong. In November, Frank said that Helium will be onboarding another 40 to 50 Helium hotspot manufacturers in the coming months, bringing the total amount of Helium manufacturers to around 75. Regarding 5G coverage, Frank estimates that there will be 260,000 5G-compatible hotspots set up in the United States by the end of 2022, in addition to the 40,000 coming from FreedomFi. And that reminds me, Helium's documentation notes that all manufacturers will have to create their own Helium apps starting in March this year, as Helium's own mobile app will only work with the hotspots created by Helium Systems Inc. Helium will also be creating a dedicated mobile Helium wallet. Anyhow, I digress. Frank also hinted that Helium is on the cusp of securing additional partnerships with telecommunications companies to patch the, quote, soft spots in their existing networks, especially when it comes to 5G. This relates to what Helium co-founder Amir Halim said in a December panel, and that is that Helium's next network after 5G will be wireless networks for mobile phones. This could put Helium in direct competition with telecoms companies, and that's something the project actively avoided at the beginning when it was just getting started. Now it looks like it's become big enough to put up a fight. Meanwhile, on Helium's GitHub, 15 additional Helium improvement proposals, or HIPs, have been added since I last covered the project. HIPs that are currently in discussion are worth pointing out. The first is HIP 41, which proposes an elaborate on-chain governance mechanism for Helium. I believe this is an improvement to an earlier HIP about on-chain governance. The second is HIP 48, which proposes adding support for the Internet Protocol, or IP. The authors seem to imply that IP support will make it easier to onboard the 2 billion devices that will be looking for a home as 3G is scaled back. The same authors of HIP 41 also recently published HIPs 51, 52, and 53, which seek to create decentralized autonomous organizations, or DAOs, for Helium, its low-frequency network, and its 5G network, respectively. As recent events have shown, community governance can be a powerful thing, especially when a sizable treasury is involved, and you can learn more about it using the link in the description. Anyhow, call me crazy, but I can't help but feel that Helium is desperately trying to decentralize, and this brings me to the concerns I have about the project. The first concern I have about Helium has to do with regulations. For starters, there's the HNT coin. As some of you may have noticed, the only US exchange HNT is listed on is Binance US. According to CoinDesk, this is likely because HNT is at risk of being considered a security, like a stock, in the eyes of the SEC rather than a currency. Now, I reckon this is a reasonable assessment given that Helium literally sold security tokens to investors. This regulatory uncertainty means cryptocurrency exchanges in the United States are likely hesitant to list HNT, and it could also affect whether Grayscale can create a trust for HNT. Helium's efforts to decentralize everything from its manufacturing to app support suggest this is in fact the case because being, quote, sufficiently decentralized is the criterion that many believe the SEC is using to classify cryptocurrencies as currencies and not securities. It's not just Helium that's facing regulatory scrutiny, however. From what I was able to gather from interviews with the team, Helium hotspot operators have been running into regulatory issues as well, especially those operating outside of the United States. This is because Helium currently operates on frequencies that aren't regulated in the United States, but of course this isn't the case elsewhere. There's also no guarantee that this won't change in the United States going forward, especially as 5G networks become more common. Speaking of Helium hotspot operators, it doesn't look like Helium's network has achieved any meaningful user adoption. At first glance, Helium's coverage map looks nothing short of amazing. However, there's another map which apparently shows how many devices are connected to the Helium network in real time, and as you can see, there aren't very many. Now, to be fair, this lack of adoption could be partially or even entirely explained by the chronic supply chain issues we've seen over the last year or so. These supply chain issues have hit the tech industry hard because it's caused a shortage in semiconductor chips, and Amir mentioned in that aforementioned panel that Apple is getting priority now that production is finally ramping back up. Chip shortages are also part of why there's a backlog of 2.4 million hotspots, and that's something that could affect the rollout of Helium's 5G hotspots later this year. To make matters worse, tech giants will likely get priority on that front as well. Amazon and Elon Musk's Starlink are working hard on similar network solutions. Now, with all that said, there is a silver lining to this situation. Helium has no competition in cryptocurrency, and this is something that many VCs have mentioned as being a major selling point for the project. In contrast to tech giants and telecoms companies, Helium can also move quickly, and it has no shortage of public support because what it's trying to achieve is easy to understand and objectively valuable. Helium may have a hard time in 2022, but to me, it's a no-brainer that HNT will eventually become a top cryptocurrency. Oh, and if you're wondering what other crypto predictions I have for this year, well, you can find out using the link in the description. And that's all for today's Helium update. If you learned something new, let me know by smashing that like button. If you plan on coming back again, subscribing to the channel and pinging that notification bell is the best way to do it. If you're looking for more content from me, you can find it on Coin Bureau Clips. I also have a crypto podcast that you can find on platforms like Spotify, Audible, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find me on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram to get my hot takes in real time, and you can join my Telegram channel where I tell you about any interesting crypto stuff I find. If you're wondering what other cryptos I hold as part of my portfolio besides HNT, all you need to do is subscribe to my weekly newsletter. Why not? It's free. If you're looking for some of the best deals in crypto, then head over to my deals page. Discounts, promos, and all that good stuff. You can find your way to all these resources and more using the links down below. Thanks for watching, ladies and gents. I look forward to seeing you all again.